No, firstly, absolutely, welcome to Linda, to Paul, to Thomas, everyone who's joined us. Firstly, Happy New Year and welcome. It's start of a new year. I don't know where everyone is or what situations are like and weathers are like. So we're going to have some fun today. But firstly, Happy New Year. And really all of the best to you and the family for 2021, and may it all be a really, really good year.
Yeah, same to you, Roberto.
Thank you. With me this morning, we've also got my co-host, Alessandro, who's going to be piloting a little bit with me because, for those of you who know me, I like to do interactive presentations. So I'm not going to speak to you for, an hour and a half. I really want to engage with you. So, Alessandro, if you can just quickly introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. How you heard, I'm Alessandro. Glad to be here. And if there's any difficulties, just chat to me on the chat box or just give me a shout.
Excellent. Thanks, Alessandro. And Alessandro will also make sure at the same time that any questions that we have, we don't miss. So if you have a question in the middle of the session, drop it into the chat box or just unmute yourself and we can certainly have it at the same time as we go. So, again, firstly, just really welcome to everyone. And we're going to use several of these Zoom interactive tools today. So if everyone knows where the chat box is, I'd love you to open up the chat box and just, type in where you're connecting from. So, I'm connecting from, and I'm just going to quickly write it in, from Zurich. So if everyone else can just, type it in. I should have put everyone on there. Let me do that one again. So I'm connecting from Zurich. Yeah, just to let us know where you're connecting from in the world today, and also what, potentially what your weather's like, to see who's got the best weather. Gray and a little bit of snow coming in from Zurich at the moment. So if everyone can find their chat box, if you can't find your chat box, please just, raise your hand or shout out to me that you might have an issue with the chat box, just so I can see you, just to make sure we've got everything and that everything is good and we then can get going. Just want to quickly move this one over here. Perfect. There we go. Okay. So Linda from Norway, Paul from the south of Poland. Weather is cold and grey in Poland too. And I believe it's a public holiday in Poland too, if I'm not mistaken, Paul.
Yeah, that's correct. Today it's the Finny Day, so it's a bank holiday, but nevertheless I'm in the office, so I'm not sure that's bad, but it's quiet.
I do apologize for it, but I'm glad everyone's here. So, let's get going with this as we go. And, one of the things that, before we even start is really, I'd like to say thank you for everyone for being here. I do appreciate it. Public holiday or not, working day, it's the beginning of the year. So I'd love you to just, take some time for yourself and set everything aside. We're here at the beginning of the year, so you've got lots of new goals, lots of new things that you're planning on doing. You might be stuck at home like me. I'm actually in quarantine at the moment, not because I have the virus, but I came back from South Africa. So, you might have kids running around the house. You might, whatever the situation, I invite you to just put all of that aside and just, give yourself the permission to be present and to, partake in the session as we go along today. And, this is really driven because I believe, that people deserve great managers, and as well as a great place to work. And I'm sure you would all agree. If you agree that people deserve great managers and a great place to work, then just, drop that into the chat box. Say yes, give me a thumbs up, virtually or, on camera, any way you want, because, I believe, team members are at every level in our organization, and, we should give them, the right amount of direction, the right amount of support that they need, so that overall they can deliver, they can develop mastery as well as self-reliance. And guess what? If we do that, then, we will succeed in everything that we are trying to do at the same time. Thank you, Paul, for that. the right to have a good leader. Absolutely. And as leaders, we also want to show up as the best we can be. I mean, I don't know anyone, whether a leader or, anyone in this world who arrives at work and goes, how can I do something bad today? How can I really mess up? No one does that, at least no one that I know. So, everyone wants to be their best, and we all intend to show up well, but quite often we don't necessarily always have, the right skills to do that. So, quite often I see it out there that, people wait until teams fail or people fail, then suddenly we start to take the next step into, training them or talking to them, and my thing is, let's not wait, let's start right now, because, I want to show you some of the successes that come in business, that we can have in business in these difficult times. And, what I'm going to share with you, a lot of it comes out of our situational leadership training that we do, but I just want to give you some ideas of how it's being applied by different organizations, specifically in the automotive industry, which, like a lot of industries coming out of 2020, OE level, production way down, really struggling. Aftermarket faring slightly better. We look forward at 2021, and hopefully it's going to be a year of recovery. I think most people are probably optimistic, or shall I say positively optimistic, but they're positive, optimistic, but we're going to be slow and see how the year goes. So, this really is for you. If you lead a team, if you manage people, if you consider yourself a leader and you want to form the best, get your team to do the best, then this is really for you. Now, quick question. I know a few of you. For those of you I don't know, I mean, who would consider themselves as a leader, or shall I say it the other way around? Who would say they are not leaders? And I'll ask it in reverse, because I'm hoping that everyone's going to say, yeah, we're leaders, because, I believe whether you have the status of a leader, or whether you are a parent or a friend and colleague, you are a leader. Because I believe that, anytime that you're trying to influence the development, the thinking, the behavior of other people, you are being a leader, and I jokingly keep telling my wife that, I think parenting is probably the most difficult leadership position, because, you don't hire the kids, and guess what? You can't fire them. And to get them to do what you want is not always really easy. So, leadership is about all, and I just want to say, welcome to, COVID-19 vaccination recovery phase. I mean, most countries, I think you're rolling out vaccination plans and everything getting going around that. And, this is going to take a while. So, welcome to that phase. I'm not on any list to get it done soon, but that will certainly be coming. But I really want to talk about, leadership and how things are related in this phase of life that we tend to be in. And, many of you might be asking yourself, well, okay, so what is this, what is this recovery phase? What is this new norm that we're talking about? And this slide I borrowed from a good friend of mine, ex-managing director at St. Gallen University here in Switzerland. And I'm not going to talk about each phase, independently, because I mean, in the world, we're all in different phases, slightly different areas. But what I want to talk about is more about the green area. Now, we've gone through, COVID, the whole lockdown situation. But, what is leadership really about as we get out? And we're probably, the almost the 12 months that, most places have started with COVID. So we're really in this transitional period into whatever the new norm is going to be. And what is leadership going to look like, as we move towards that? So, that's, what I really want to talk about and give you some ideas on. And, a lot of it goes on and goes about. So, firstly, I want to start off because, I want to get to know from you guys also. And Alessandro, I'm going to ask you to open up the first poll. And I'd like you to answer this question, as soon as Alessandro gets it up, the first poll. Let me know if you can't get it up, Ale, then okay, perfect. So my question to you really is, and you can either answer it from yourself or, from any perspective you want. What is the greatest challenge you're facing? Yeah, we are at the start of 2021, and you can answer more than one of these. I mean, is it, just trying to survive the short term, as we deal with the whole COVID situation, some businesses reopening, some places going back into lockdown, so is it, trying to survive the short term, or is it, making the right choices to survive long term. If that's the greatest challenge that you've got right now, then go ahead and just mark it on the poll, and don't forget to hit submit. You can hit more than one of this. Another place you might be in is trying to figure out where leadership and development fits into all of this at this time right now, because a lot of changes, a lot of things happening at the moment. And of course, we've always got the famous other. So if you've got something other, then let me know, drop that in, can press other, and also just share in the chat box what you're thinking, because I'd love to hear what's on your minds, what you guys see as your biggest and your greatest challenge as you stand here at the beginning of 2021, for your organization. What is the biggest challenge that you are facing right here, right now, as you look out at 2021? So if one of those are in, I'd love you to just select one and hit submit in that. Hopefully everyone can see everyone can see that. I'm just going to quickly stop that for a second, relaunch that one. Hopefully, yeah, there we go. Hopefully everyone should be able to see that one, where you can select one of the 4 options. Well, actually, you can select more than one of the 4 options. Select as many as you feel are the right ones, and then hit submit, because I'd love to hear what your biggest challenges are. And this is really going to be an interesting one. And I'm just going to give it another couple of seconds. So if Linda, whoever, if you haven't been able to get your poll in, I'd love to hear, what it is that, you're thinking of right here, right now is the biggest one. So I'm quickly going to end that one. And let's actually just share some results, and interesting enough, but not surprisingly, there's a lot about, how do we make choices and survive in the short term, and that, as I say, it doesn't surprise me at all, because, it's not the first crisis that we've been through, yet, we tend to spend a lot of time, looking at different models and different recovery phases, and we also look at, what is the normal phase for normalization, between a transition, the intense crisis situation. We look at all of those things, and I'm going to quickly just stop sharing that so that we can at least see the screen at the back and close that one. So, it's, and the biggest thing about, in this situation is, when people, are stuck, and in this case, either, you're in lockdown, or you're not sure how long the situation is going to go on for, and it's any crisis, in effect, you tend to look at the effects that media has on us, and you look around, the world, and you've got, different phases of companies, different countries opening up, slowing down, all this going on. So there's a lot of unknowns. So it doesn't surprise me that, when you look at it, the 2 biggest ones are, how do we survive short term, and how do we make the right choices long term? And hopefully we can, share some ideas on how to keep, how to restart the organization, how to keep staff engaged, and, when a lot of us might not all be present in the office at the same time, because again, that's something different that we have. You might be leading a team that is present in the office, or they might be remote because you can't meet. So, let's take a look at leadership in times of crisis. Now, leading in a crisis is very different to leading in the normal, turbulent, crazy times that we've got going on. And if you think about it, we've all been involved in a VUCA world since probably the Great Depression last century, and, the difference again between the crisis is that time suddenly compresses, and I'm sure you've probably realized that over the, the best part of last year, that as this unknown situation happens, time compresses purely because, the consequences are greater, and it puts even more pressure on leadership. So I'm going to dig into this a little bit now, and I've been looking at different research models to understand, what are those things that are most important? And I think you can look at, within your own organization, your own models, or, within the automotive industry, or even within your own country, to see how leaders are, how are leaders doing in these times of crisis that we have? Because unfortunately, because of what we experience, we're in a crisis, and there really are 3 things that are critical in a crisis, and they're important, be it on a daily, day-to-day business, but in a time of crisis, they become even more important, even more powerful that, absolutely we need to be doing. The first one is, connecting authentically, and, by defining reality, and defining reality is, the first job we need to do as leaders. So when it comes to leadership in a crisis, it's really about, the keys to build momentum and commitment to what do we see as the reality that's out there. The second one is navigating challenges. And, challenges come in a time of crisis at very different speeds and also different severities within, with very different consequences. So, in normal times, we've got a lot of change going on, but when crises are going on, whether it's industry crisis or COVID crisis or any crisis, even family ones, the consequences are very different, the speed that it comes at. The third one is really, how do we inspire performance, with our teams, with our people? I'll be talking a little bit more about that because that's through involving the people, involving the team. How do we get the trust going? How do we communicate with people? So, generally there's two ways that people go about when trying to perform under pressure, and we'll talk about those in just a minute. So when you think about crisis and leading in any sort of crisis, it's really about leadership is almost on steroids, if I can put it that way. It's like on drugs because cycle times are so much faster in terms of what is happening. The pressure is on, and one wrong mistake or the mistake, that takes us in the wrong direction. And I'm not even talking about, the mistake of not taking action, leads us into the wrong direction very quickly. So, more people, that face direct consequences in comparison to just the normal, crazy, busy times that we have normally. So, leadership is really on steroids. And see if this is true for you, because it certainly has been true for me during, the last couple of years, well, probably most part of last year, is everything seems to be magnified. Fear becomes quite rampant. And leadership is even more critical than ever. And, so, everything is magnified. I think we probably will all agree on that, and so why does, fear become rampant, and why does it even matter? And I think, I like looking at it from a social neurosciences perspective, because if you think of, our frontal cortex and, for the most recent part that's evolved of the brain, one of the nice shiny lobes, and this is the one that controls judgment, that controls time, creativity, innovation, and it looks at the quality of an experience, in life. And that's where, we want to learn, we want to develop. That's the one that says, hey, I want to come onto webinars and learn something. So it really comes from the frontal cortex that also that enables behavior, and to behave well, behave in a way that is rational, especially when we respond to situations and different circumstances. So, when we get into a crisis situation, fear tends to build up. And, you might not know this, but your frontal cortex cannot run all day long in that state. So it gets to a point where it does, and it can just literally shuts down, and that's what it actually does, in times of crisis when there's just too much going on. Then you get to the oldest part of the brain, which is often referred to as the reptilian side of the brain, and that kind of looks at, am I surviving? It's not really concerned about the quality of life. Your toes could be falling off, but as long as you're surviving, as long as you're alive, then it's okay, because that's the only part that's this one's concerned about. And that's where we get the fight or flight mode. If either you freeze or you react and you run. And it's really about, am I going to survive or am I going to die? Nothing else is really important at that moment in time. So, in times of change and in times of crisis, people's number one concern, and, think about yourself when this all started to happen last year, the first concern that probably all of us went through was, okay, how does this personally affect me? What does this mean for me? So, we go through that one, and that's the important part, and a lot of it, when you look over the last several months, there's been so much of these crazy situations, and you might have been in a situation yourself where either you or a colleague, a family member or a friend, and, maybe they've been you've been on the edge of kind of losing it in some of the situations. And maybe, you've been able to speak someone down from that ledge, and it's generally, these are very highly emotional and agitated states that, we land up getting into. And, if you've been in that situation, and, I take one of mine, I live in Switzerland and I have a fear of heights. So skiing is complicated. So I do low-level skiing because I get to, high mountains and suddenly, my brain rationally stops working. It goes into, oh, I'm going to die. And, it's a natural reaction. And it's only afterwards I come back off the mountain and I go like, wow, like I kind of lost it back there. And this is what tends to happen in short-term crisis. It is easy to lose. And, what we're experiencing now is really not short-term crisis, but this is long periods of uncertainty. When you think about it, what is 2021 going to bring? Well, if anyone has a crystal ball, I would love to hear it. Same thing, 12 months ago, if you looked at what 2020 was going to bring, it probably wasn't what happened in reality. If anyone had COVID on the list, then you've got a nice crystal ball. But, that's the situation. And, what it comes down to is leadership becomes absolutely critical. And what we found over time, we've looked at things that work and we looked at things that don't work, and I'm not talking about opinions yet. I'm really talking about facts that we've looked at, and what makes leadership work and what doesn't work from a leadership perspective. So, when people go through the brain state of, suddenly being emotional and irrational, because it does happen, it's important to be able to take a step back, think clearly, take action, and some people's leadership, is to push things and push people into place. Other leaders tend to, drive out of fear, but leadership is actually about, putting things back into place again, into a more rational and more reasonable, situation than what we can often make it out to be. So, the first one, as I said, is connecting authentically. And that's, probably the most important one, and connecting authentically is really critical because people don't buy the leadership until they buy the leader. I don't know if you follow that, because when you tend to get into this pressure cooker situation or any sort of crisis, either that you've been in, people can and do make quick decisions about, do I buy the leader? And whether they believe the leader and whether the leader is going to take them to, in the right direction or the promised land or out of this critical situation. So it's always been true, but I think it's even more true so in any critical situation that, people are not going to buy the message unless they buy you, because they want to buy the leader first, So leaders need to connect with people and, explicitly in enabling people to experience, and, also as a leader, I know a lot of people go, well, as a leader, I can't show my vulnerability, and at the end of the day, I think it takes, real leadership to be able to stand up and go, guys, I don't have all of the answers. Together, let's figure it out because, all of us are smarter than me alone. But a lot of people don't like that vulnerability. And I guess, also having access, and being accessible to the people. So, a lot of leaders, just want to be heard and don't really want to actually be part of it. So, remember that, people don't buy the message until they buy you as their leader. And Alessandro, if you can go on and share the second poll. The second poll, I've put together a small list of what, gets in the way of leaders connecting authentically. Thank you, Alessandro. And what gets in the way? And I'd love you to choose the top one. And this time you can only choose one, so you can't choose all of them, unlike the biggest problem. But, what do you see that gets in the way of leaders connecting authentically? Is it that, they don't share, leaders don't share what is going on. If that's your biggest problem, then, that you've seen, select that one. Or, the second one, leaders can sometimes tend to put a spin on things, they might not tell you straight. If that's what you can see as one of the things getting in the way of people connecting authentically, then, hit that one. The third one is, the other side of the coin, about putting a spin on it is if you've ever been with a leader that overshares. Now, that can also get in the way of people connecting authentically. Or, maybe it's number 4 where, leaders tend to shift the issue. They tend to deflect the topic. You're asking them about one thing and, they make it about something else. If you've been in that experience, that does also stop leaders and stop people from connecting authentically. Or the last one, the biggest challenge with people, might also be that there is no empathy. Leaders unfortunately sometimes can be criticized as not being empathetic. So, I'd love you to pick one of those and hit submit. If I haven't selected everything and there's something else that you can think of, then absolutely, I'd love you to, drop it into the chat box, and, we can also pick that one up. Give everyone another minute, no, not a minute, another couple of seconds in that one. Okay, let's just quickly end the poll on that one. Okay, just going to quickly, oops, not that one. I wanted to share the results. Sorry, I should have asked Alessandro to do that. So interesting enough, I mean, when we look at it, what tends to get in the way, we see that, don't share what's going on, or people tend to overshare. And again, as a leader, I mean, our number one job is to tell people the truth about how things really are. We've got to see things for what they are and then respond to the situation. And in any sort of crisis, generally things change on a minute-to-minute basis. So it's not just about having, one enduring statement, but it's actually about sharing the truth on a very regular basis. And putting a spin on things. Is also about, well, where are we trying to drive towards? Because a lot of people, might put a spin on about a political, some sort of agenda that they have, or a strategic direction that they would like to go in. So that quite quickly can, make people feel uncomfortable and blow up. And it's interesting that we talk about not a lot of oversharing. Because I've experienced times when people share their fear, and then that can also quite quickly become about them and not the situation that we're all going through together. So that's an interesting one also that we've mentioned. Sometimes also shifting issues, and again, that's really about deflecting it or even blaming someone or any other group that's in there. So let me quickly stop sharing that. Hopefully it should take that screen out. Perfect. And jumping on to the next one. So I quickly would like to change gears, and talk about what are the 3 things that people need to feel connected to their leader. And this, again, it's not my opinion, but it's based on good research around leadership that's worked practically well in the normal day-to-day situation, but in a crisis situation, then even more so. And what I'm talking about a crisis is, we're talking about something life-threatening situation, or, a short, something that's extremely short, So, surviving, you in the jungle and a lion jumps out. Okay, that's short, it's intense. You've got to react very quickly. But at the end of the day, surviving, it's really about enduring the future. So, if you think of, the early Arctic explorers, who would go out and survive a winter on the ice, before that, they had even understood exactly what was out there. So that's, really a short critical space of time. And the first one that we find is forthrightness and honesty. And honesty is, what I'm seeing, and what I'm concluding as a result, and that maybe we don't always see is, and we don't always know what we don't know, and we don't always see the future. Forthright and honest. Sometimes it's just not about what we know, but it's also about admitting what we don't know, as well as encouraging, conversations about what other people are seeing. Because, when crisis starts, it all comes out, and generally, if you think about even, the COVID crisis, there were some pre-warnings that already started a couple of months earlier in different places. But, when it eventually hits us, people go like, wow, where did that come from? And I wish I had seen it, because I didn't, but, a lot of us feel that way, that we wish we could have seen it. But, if you think about the Chinese New Year last time around, there were already rumors of this going on, but we probably all didn't connect the dots fully. So, again, forthrightness, honesty, saying what we are seeing, and that has to be done again and again. So, it's rapid succession, or, about the truth, because the truth can change, the situation change. And what I've learned from, speaking to people in China and Asia, I'm sure you've had the similar experiences, that when the crisis really hit, what was going on, and something that, a friend of mine, Chris, said, and I'll never forget, because he said to me, he was the first one in the COVID crisis, And he said the speed of things, suddenly in a crisis, a day becomes a week and a week is a month. And you can't see anything further out past a month because, with any degree of clarity. And, think about it, we went into lockdown here in kind of March, and it was like, yeah, you couldn't see a month or 2 or 3 ahead. And here we sit in 2021, and there's still a lot of uncertainty going on. You can maybe see a day, a week, a month. Can you see 3 months ahead into the future with, some degree of clarity? So, it really boils down that, time is, speeds up and it gets compressed. So, the first job about all of these things is, needs to happen on a regular moment by moment basis, and something, people need something to believe in right now, and whatever that thing is, and that thing can actually change, but they need to believe and they need to be doing something right now, and research also shows this, that, the reason to live is a key driver in people surviving any sort of crisis, any sort of challenging situations. And if you think of, people who have survived prisoner of war camps or concentration camps, or, been in tough situations out in the wilderness, people who generally get back to safety, even though they've had really devastating injuries. I mean, I was, down in South Africa recently, and we heard about this one woman hiking out in the mountains, and she landed up breaking a leg. Now, you can imagine breaking a leg in the middle of nowhere, probably not the best situation, especially not in South Africa, cell phone connection, a little bit questionable. So, in her mind, her number one reason is, I need to get back to my car where she had left it. I need to get back to the car. I need to get back to my daughter. And all she kept thinking about was her daughter and getting back to the car, and she just carried on going. And if you think about it, with broken leg or whatever it is, you actually start to ignore the pain. So people generally need to focus on one thing. And, she kind of put it in context of, I walked to the next corner, I walked over the next hill, and it was one obstacle at a time. And when she got to the next one, she focused on, and eventually she did make it back and she did survive. So, when you get into situations, whether it's in crisis or in change, and again, you look at the situation we're in. Here we are, okay, we've learned a little bit from last year. Again, a lot of people we've had to send home. Countries are locked down. We people are working from home, and people tend to struggle because, again, here we are. We look into the future. How's this going to affect me? But in reality, we don't know how it's going to affect our people. I mean, the ones we've sent home and are working from home, is this going to be short term, or is this going to be for the rest of the year? Or is it going to be on and off for the rest of the year? And none of us really like change. So, communication is absolutely everything. And people need, something to believe in, whatever the plan is, and if you look at it, I mean, everyone has had to delay things, change things, Auto Mechanica being canceled, are we going to have Auto Mechanica this year? So a lot of uncertainty, but people need something to believe in. And that's really important. And, and that can also change. Sometimes it can even change on a day-to-day basis or even a moment-to-moment basis because the external environment is continuously changing. And, we need to give them something to do and something meaningful in their perspective. So, when you think of it, the other side of what leadership looks like is, let's take a look at leaders who tend to fail under pressure. When a crisis or a challenge hits, people either excel and then, they tend to look back and, they look back and they go, okay, well, we did something right, or people tend to lack and don't respond. And, then again, you look back and you might say, well, okay, what happened? Because at the end of the day, as a leader in a crisis situation, in a changing situation, either you add value or leaders tend to sit back and start to regret, maybe they regret the mission, or maybe they regret their behavior, or they regret, the actions that they didn't take. So, it's kind of like when, a building is on fire and, the number one concern is, well, we got to get out of this building right now, save the baby or not. And it's, who's the one? Or, are you the one that tends to run back in the building to get, to save the dog or the baby, or do you freeze and let someone else do it? And, there's no right or wrong because we all react differently under pressure, but it's an important one to know. And, research also indicates that very seldom do people and leaders sit in the middle. It's research shows that either in times of crisis and change, either you succeed or leaders tend to buckle under the pressure. There doesn't seem to be, that halfway situation. And, maybe you've seen this in terms of buckling, because times have been, there's so much change going on, and recovery and change. And as this carries on in different perspectives, from a leadership perspective, it's very difficult, change, driving forward, and again, research also shows that organizations that don't create, organizations don't create value or market share, in downtimes. It's not normal. It's generally, as companies start to come out of those downtimes, that then you gain market share or you gain value. It's something, but it's in the recovery that you begin that to gain, and it's not what you did in that outgoing period, the outgoing phase, but it's what you land up doing in the middle of the situation as everything is falling apart. What you tend to do there is going to decide how you come out of the situation. And, for most organizations, a lot of them, the first thing they did is, okay, resources, cut all the resources off because, we need to survive. Cash is king. And without surviving, we have problems. So your number one, companies have gone and had to refinance. That's been the survival. But again, it's about getting resources in there. But at the same time, it can also be, how do we provide and do better jobs? Do we have a vision to respond to this recovery? And because that's where companies are going to fail. And I've seen so many companies that, have cut so deeply. Initially, everyone was in lockdown, so it was fine. We're paying our people to stay at home. As soon as government subsidies ended, then companies started to let people go, which I think is very sad. And I think some companies have cut so deeply that, they've kind of ruined their business, or, have cut off their ability that when things do get back under to some sort of level, they actually can't take advantage of the situation. So, leaders who fail will either do it during a downtime, the downturn, or it's going to happen, usually in the recovery. And it's usually for one of three reasons, and the first one is that, quite often they're not honest, they're not forthright, and the second form, kind of forms part of the first one, is that they're not always telling the truth. They don't just have, they don't always have the awareness of the notion that I need to tell the truth and, be forthright. I need to tell things the way they are, and the second one, again, it's also about not being honest, because quite often as leaders, you might go, well, I'm not honest with myself about the situation. And, one of my favorite books is by an author, Sidney Frankelstein, Why Smart Executives Fail. And, when you think of that one of the things that Sidney says is that he talks about the 7 sins of spectacular business failures. And it's a great book. If anyone has read it or wants to read it, it's a nice read, And one of those sins he talks about is leaders fail to see the game-changing, dangerous dynamics. Leaders underestimate, the number of variables that are coming at them, at crushing speed, at speed of lightning. And, they tend to crush them. It crushes their businesses. So either, they're not honest with themselves, or they just don't happen to see it. So in some sort of degree, that leaders can be in denial. So, you've got to see the severity of the situation, and they just didn't respond. So, leaders, have to be honest, have to be forthright, because, that's certainly one of the original sins that Sidney talks about. The second one, again, leaders can be too factual or too sterile. So, crisis brings out fear in people because we don't have all the answers. So and everyone responds to fear in different ways. So, if you've got sterile leadership, what you have is, fear, and you're engaging people, and people are being vulnerable, and they don't feel the connection, and you suddenly have to reverse those trends which are happening, someone's brain. Again, the fight or flight mode, the frontal cortex tends to shut down, and that's just, the way people are wired. So we have to find ways to make people feel safe, people feel valued, and that's what great leaders do, So if you want to be a great leader, you can't just stand up, but, by being factual and sterile and saying, these are the facts. you've got to be more emotional than that. And the third piece, it's really, leaders don't always promote immediate action. And there's organizations out there that have done it and have done well during this crisis, during challenging times. But, people generally either who overreact, and that can become an issue in itself, or people underreact and are underprepared. So not being prepared to go back to the way, to the highway, to the way business used to be, you start to let things pass you by. So, many opportunities can happen, but those are, three things that are just absolutely instant killers in there, and just quickly jumping over one. Let's get to this one, the right one. I think I might have missed something. Oops, I think I might have missed something, and now I've totally messed it up. So just bear with me a second. I do apologize. There we go. Back on it, so, and just a quick one. Linda says, apologize. I lost the connection, was kicked out. Linda, not to worry. Hopefully we can get that sorted. Sorry, I only saw it now. So again, navigating changes, and let me just ask a quick one. Alessandro, have you seen any questions come in, because quite often, around this time, people, I've had the question come up quite often about, about trust and the right amount of feelings, when we need to make tough decisions. And, if you have any questions, drop them into the chat box so we don't lose track of that. And we'll also have a Q&A session at the end, and, going back to one of the questions I get, is about trust and the right amount of feelings. And that's really, it's an interesting one because, well, what is the, well, when you think about feelings and making tough decisions, is that people need to understand that, as a leader, as human beings, we as leaders are making tough decisions, and we do have feelings, and, they're not going to, we shouldn't put up a wall as if there is no feelings, but there is a difference, I believe, between, what I experience as a human being and, what it needs to be done. Because I mean, as a leader, sometimes you experience the feelings of making tough decisions. You need to put those aside, but you also need to look at it, even though my role and the decision I need to do is painful, I need to get on and make it happen. So even if it's going to, if it's going to affect people that work with me or for me, remember the ultimate goal at the end of the day, in any of these phases is to survive. So if you, take a ship down with you because you're not going to make tough decisions, especially around, personnel or resources for the short term, then you're probably not going to come back because you didn't make those tough decisions, and they were important. So, and quite often those decisions can weigh you down either in debt or higher costs. And ultimately, as a leader, that is your responsibility. So, great leaders are able to also communicate how they're experiencing the situation as human beings. And, and then it's also being able to step out of that, back into the role, make the decision, make things happen. And people can empathize, and people, I believe, will also understand that leaders, often, we might not like the decisions we have to make, but, they also know that as a leader, you're a human being and you need to make tough decisions. So, let's talk a little bit about navigating challenges, and this is a model that comes out of the situational leadership training that we do. But the situational leadership model, it really looks at, and I'm just going to jump, if you take a look at the bottom side, there are 4 stages or 4 developmental levels. So, you've got D1 all the way to D4. And what leaders do in the normal crazy times, let's put it that way. As leaders, we quite quickly assess people. We diagnose people where they are on a specific goal. And then, if you think of a D1 would be an enthusiastic beginner, or even, potentially a disillusioned learner, or at a D3, you're capable, you're conscious leader. D3 or a D4, which is, really a self-reliant leader. And what great leaders do, in a matter of, probably less than 4 seconds, you do it. You stop, you think for about 4 seconds, and you go, who is this person? What are the goals they're working on? What is their competency on the goal? And what is their level of commitment? And what is, their development level, and therefore what style should I be using? And this works really well on, a regular basis. So, but what I'm going to say is, just to give you an example. So, we've got Alessandro with us, and he's our technical guy today. So, let's say I was working with Alessandro on a topic where he was a D1. And let's say, well, okay, D1 in hosting this session. He hasn't done as many as I've done. And, quite often what could suddenly happen is, in the middle of it, you might be going and suddenly we have a technical issue, or I don't know, the internet connection had to go down. And now all of a sudden, how is he going to react to it? Would be very different if he was, let's say, a D4. So a D4 would be someone, I would consider myself a D4 on, running these sort of sessions, where if something technically would go wrong, I would quite quickly, adjust my style to what Alessandro's going on. So, if Alessandro was with me and suddenly it went wrong, I wouldn't be able to say to him, we wouldn't be working in partnership. I'd need to be very directive and say, Alessandro, try this, switch that on, switch that off, have you reset that? And we would get through it quite quickly. Where if Alessandro was a D4 on it, then we would be working far more in partnership. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense, of development levels in this crazy cycle. Because what happens under pressure and in any sort of crisis, it suddenly becomes much harder. What happens is, again, as we said, time speeds up and the consequences are more present, and they can lead to much, much more disaster. And that's where, situational leadership, I believe, is absolutely appropriate, because situational leadership works, just as well when you deal with different, in different ways, because, there's two ways that people go that work, and ways that don't work. So two ways that people go that don't work, and I believe there's one way that people goes that really does work. And let's have a quick look at those, because when you think about it, there are two parts of COVID, which, I think is really, it's really important. And the first one was speed, or in any crisis. And I mean, you can replace COVID with any crisis going on. Time really speeds up. And as we mentioned, a day becomes a week, a week is a month, and a month is out of sight, and that's, probably the point where, is most important. Yeah, probably the lesson that's most important over 2020 is that, when, suddenly, crisis tends to happen, it's really about how do we increase the cycle time of doing the good things, and not just because time speeds up, but because everything is just so much faster. The second one is making sure that you do these things on a regular basis, and, involve people, not because it's just what you want to do, but it's because your business needs to survive. Your business needs to grow. So we got to absolutely involve people. And, and here is, what tends to happen. We're talking about the two ways. And, the number one way some people go when they're under pressure is they go, wow, I'm under pressure. Time is compressed. Consequences are great. I'm dealing with, so many people that are fearful, and, we're dealing with uncertainty, and, we need to be clear. So they go into what is called a style 2, which is highly directive and highly supportive. And it's a good instinct is to run into style 2, right? But, the thing that happens is you can't stay there, because, it's the right one to jump into, but you can't stay there for the whole crisis, because, you need to go there, you need to get things sorted out, and then you really need to shift back into style 3, which becomes low directive and highly supportive, because you've got to allow people the autonomy to do what they came on board to do. You got to get things back to the way they were, as quickly as possible. So you really need to, a new identity, you need to draw up a new identity, the new reality, set up, new goals, provide direction on the goal, so that, people can start to help themselves work through things, and that can be awkward sometimes, but, you've got to move from the style 2 to a style 3, because, you've got to let go, you've got to go from being supportive, you can't delegate all the time, and because delegation either leads to, people feeling micromanaged, or people feeling absolutely abandoned. The leader doesn't care about me. So, it may sound ironic, but we need to trust our people more in a crisis than we probably do in normal situations, because we need to trust them so that we can make the adjustments, adjust the trust, adjust the goals, adjust the strategies as we go through the cycles. And then the model shows, the situational leadership model shows that things are happening much faster. And when you talk to some people, every week or every 2 weeks, you might now need to be speaking to them more often, whether it's every day or every second day. And companies have done that. I'm sure you guys have done it when lockdown initially happened. But as we go into another phase of it, don't become too complacent about what happened in the past last year. Jump into it now and take control of it. So again, it's about talking to people at much faster. Then you can also get through people through style 1 through to style 4 much, much faster than you would normally. Because the other place people tend to go, and I've seen it unfortunately with many, is people tend to get stuck, or they default to style 4. And that's just about delegating and then leave people alone. And I've heard of this, and it's devastating. It's a devastating style under pressure. And what is interesting, is that my style, my default style is probably a style 4, or as my wife would love to say, is probably a style 5, which isn't even on the model. But I tend to give people exactly what they need, probably about 2 weeks after they need it. That's my style 5. So and that's just a joke. But as the pressure is on, and it keeps building over the next weeks, the months, and as things change, you need to be able to say no. You need to be able to continuously reframe goals, people. You've got to take action, and as quickly as possible. Otherwise, we need to trust the people that we are delegating, and then we can go back and re-clarify goals. But we need to go through the cycle again and again. So it's not just using one style and tending to get stuck there. And it's really about speeding up the cycle of positive leadership rather than sticking in one corner or in another. And hopefully that makes sense to everyone. And if there's any questions, please drop them in the chat box. Would love to hear. It's kind of a quick sip. And hopefully that does make sense, because, a question that also comes to mind is about, the speed to effective leadership, and the challenges with it. And again, when we're under stress, it's easy to fall back into our default styles, as we said. And, if you're a highly directive person, then you tend to fall back and become even more directive. Or if you're highly supportive, then you tend to think that supporting everyone is the answer to everything. We tend to lose sight that we have to keep our people moving, from, the beginner stage to where they can't take responsibility by themselves. And in these situations, it's even more critical that, we ask the people to go back to work with new processes, new tasks, combined tasks. Think of all of the disruptions that took place in 2020, and think of, things that you've had to put off. And now that 2021, people are wanting a new start, a new beginning. So, we've got to give them that. Otherwise, people are going to get disillusioned very quickly, and disillusioned in our vision, in what we're trying to do, and even us as leaders. So it's really has to be, we need to be quick to adjust. And hopefully that makes, perfect sense, because, as leaders, we, during any crisis, we need to be hands-on. Not just digging in, but we need to dig in ourselves through the different styles. And I'm a great lover of food, and I love restaurants. And when COVID happened, everything was shut down. So I was quite lucky that we were in South Africa over Christmas, and we had the opportunity to get out to eat some sushi, which I absolutely love. But even that was a totally new experience, because again, we'd been a little bit locked down, everything shut down. You go there, social distancing and masks, and it was just a very different experience. And again, when you look at the way the restaurant businesses had to adapt and change to it, if you think about it, they've gone through such change. And everyone has, as restaurant owners, everyone has default leadership styles. And most people, as I said, have maybe 2 styles, but very few people have 3 or even 4, and they can use those comfortably. So, it's natural for us that we need to step back, have a look at, what is working, what is not working, what can I do naturally? But it's, at the end of the day, leading, it's really about what other people need. And, the pressure is on leaders to give people what they need, and really at the speed at which they need it. And, with the level of involvement and you're getting away from doing what, I need to do, it becomes an important one in how we navigate, difficult and trying situations in it. So, it's really about, as I said, doing and cycling through, styles faster for the 3rd, the 4th, and the 5th time, rather than just, relying on one style, getting stuck there and staying in there. So, okay, let's talk a little bit about inspiring performance. And, this may be consistent with, a lot of the patterns you've seen or are seeing, because, performance is ultimately about where we are going. And what is great about positive leadership, because when you're a leader that inspires someone, that someone is typically going out and is being inspired. And then they go out and inspire someone else that they're working with. And, quite quickly, it becomes a cascading exponential positive effect in the organization, and the same thing happens when people feel fear. When people feel fear from their leaders or uncertainty, then that can quite quickly spread to the followers, and that spreads to the people. And before you know it, it's throughout the organization. So it's really important to create intentional leadership and, inspiring people in the face of any sort of crisis, or as we recover from this crisis, is really, really key. You can't go, oh, no, it's okay. It's not so bad. It's, we'll get through the recovery. It'll all be okay. It's not about that, because none of us know how long this is going to last, how it's going to affect us. So at the end of the day, we've got to be believable. And, if we're thinking and we're talking about the future, we've got to be talking about it. Is it generally going to be a slower recovery? Is it going to be a faster recovery than anybody wants? Because again, we see things differently. And quite often, I don't know if you've met some of these people out there, we can pre-complain about everything that is wrong, everything that we feel. And, we tend to then project it into the future and say, well, nothing's working now, so it's going to last forever. It's a disaster. Well, if we say it's a disaster, it's going to be a disaster. So, as leaders, we need to, create this picture in our own minds, which takes people away from the fear, takes people away from the challenges. There are challenges, but we've got to create this picture of, what the future is going to look like, and start moving towards it and help people see those opportunities, in the recovery phase, because there are plenty of them, and it's in the recovery phase, as I say, as we go through it, 2nd, 3rd, who knows how many times we're going to go through it this year. It's there where we're going to gain the opportunities to gain market share, to gain business. And, eventually, hopefully we'll get back to prosperity and business as usual. But, at the moment we've got to be inspired versus being negative. It's one or the other. So inspiration is really about relying, and it's really about, that's an important one. And we need to create that counter to the fear that this crisis has created. And again, just thinking of one of them now, we start to do the vaccines and people are going, well, I want them, and others are going, no, because we don't know what they like. And again, you just look at social media and the fear creation carries on. And this is what our people and our teams are feeding. So it's an important one for us to be able to inspire what is real, inspire what is important, inspire what we want to do, inspire where we want to go. So we really need to make that happen. And as I mentioned before, in a crisis, people either tend to step up and act heroically, or they tend to fall down and do what everyone else expects of them. So, it's an important one to think of, do you want to be the person that stands up and acts heroically during these times, or do you want to be remembered for the person that fell down and kind of did what everyone expected, which is fail, which is not what we want to do, because that's not what we're really about. So, when you look at it, we've also got to step into our position of power. And, to be honest, we need to take, we need to stand up, we need to be adults, and we've got to be counted. in a crisis, it certainly separates people. And, what does it look like when people step up and step out and act heroically versus, the ones that aren't? The heroics are the ones that don't let a moment go past. They don't miss out on any opportunities. They're always ready to make an impact for the greater good, and or not. And, you talk about, as, being back home again, one of my greatest mentors in life happened to be my mom. And she always said to me, don't let a good crisis go to waste. She said to me, that because she grew up just after the Second World War when literally they had nothing. I mean, she must have been probably 7 or 8 when all of that was going on, and they pretty much lost everything. But, she taught me how to become a survivor. First, you got to survive, and then you got to prepare so that you can really benefit from everything that's going on along the way, because you're not going to come out of it one way. You've got to come out of it one way or another. So to me, it's going to be a waste if you come out of that situation exactly the same way we went into it. But at the end of the day, it's a choice, and we need to choose, and we need to feel proud, and we need to feel like one of those people that are going to benefit from everything going on, rather than sitting back and just struggling along the way. When you think of the Asian countries, I mean, generally business leaders look at, a 100-year business plan. And when you think about, there's always 2 groups of people. The first one is where, you're saying that the wheel of business has kind of stopped, it's slow, and, not much going on, but we need to prepare, we need to start connecting, we need to help and inspire our people. And that's one part of it, and another way, how do people inspire? Because again, a lot of us are or have been working, smart working, remote working. And again, you've got so many different tools that you can see, at the moment. So there's so many different ways. And then there's the second group. They're the ones that are saying, well, there's just too much going on. We're going to have to wait. We can't make decisions. We don't know. So let's just wait and see, cut costs, lest survive. So that's one of the other ways. And it's really interesting that in this situation there are these 2 groups, ones that are looking at it positively and looking at it negatively, and it's the same crisis but different sort of thinking, and they act differently, and they're going to come out of the situation very different. And I believe that this time is an opportunity to find ways that we can add value in any situation, adding value to our leaders. As leaders, we need to understand that the crisis certainly has, changed the speed of time. Things have sped up, and there are consequences. And, there's consequences to us personally, emotionally, again, because of all the fear that does happen to go on. Again, as I said, it shuts down the frontal cortex, and we don't always, necessarily think rationally, because, when uncertainty happens, inspiration, innovation tends to be the first thing that tends to fail. And that's really what we need to be giving our teams, giving the people that we work with. So hopefully that's going to give you something to help as we kick off the new year. And, again, it's really about accelerating and ramping up the involvement, the trust in our team, again, because, behavior in trust works 2 ways, and either you can sit back and wait, or you can tend to lean in and go forward. And again, the way people are going to trust you and the way people are going to see you is going to be totally different if you're sitting back on the chair waiting, or if you're leaning in and you're going to get going on, trying to do what you can do. So, these leadership principles are even more, and I think even more critical now, last year, this year, than ever before. Because, when we look at it, whether we are remote or customers, may not even want to be seeing us, and suddenly we've got to be doing Zoom calls or MS Teams or WebEx or any of those, connecting with people, connecting with teams, connecting with clients. It's absolutely still critical. And these things we need to be doing more and more, faster and faster. So, my main conclusion for today is that, any sort of crisis tends to uncover the need for leadership. And, as leaders, we need to step up and do it at a faster cycle. And that's, really, we've got to lean in and get things done, and, whether we work with people, we've got to remember that, a day is a week is a month. And, anything more than a month is totally out of sight. So, short gaps, short terms, and move forward in it. And just something that I wanted to share with everyone, we looked at, the 4 different communication styles based on development levels. Again, something that comes out of the situational leadership. Now, we know from personal experience that one-size leadership does not fit all. If you've been a leader, if you've got kids, you know that what you do with one child does not necessarily work as well with a different one. Kids are different. And, there was a report by McKinsey in, I think it was August last year, it's titled, What's Missing in Leadership Development? And that really highlighted the issue and the need for more flexible, situational approach to leadership. And our research also shows that 54% of leaders, so, half of us on this call only use one style of leadership, regardless of the situation, which means that, unfortunately, often we're using the wrong leadership style to meet, the needs of our people, and, you might agree that that is part of the problem that we also have in our work environments today. So that's certainly something to keep in mind. And also, I just quickly wanted to share a case study of one of the companies that having global company, which has adapted the situational leadership, or SL2, and some of the impacts they've made. And you might recognize the company name because, WD-40 is probably a household name, and we've all used, probably the various products that they have and the sprays that they have, for loosening bolts. That's where I first got to learn about them years and years ago, and, they adapted the situational leadership, and they came about to, obviously, their main goal was to grow revenue, was really to change the corporate culture. And as they say, to maintain this magnificence that, they thought they had. So, they rolled it out to their top leaders. They also rolled it out to some of the middle and senior levels as they went out. And, within a very short space of time, you can see that their sales increased by 54%. Which is quite incredible, when you think about it. And, they had increases of 47% in terms of earnings. So situational leadership has a lot, and one thing that I just wanted to touch, because, their CEO, Gary Ridge, he's been recognized, I think, as the #4 CEO in the world by Inc. magazine. And, he's one of the guys that works very closely with situational leadership. And Gary's a big believer in it. And when you think of, what Gary has to say about, the situational leadership and the importance, and the great emphasis that he has on developing his team throughout his organization, it's just something I wanted to touch with you and leave with you on that one. And what I would like to do is, quite quickly, and I just want to jump to the next slide. Because, we're going to go to a Q&A, and I'd love to do some Q&A with everyone in there. And, I would like to do one final poll. This one I'm not going to share with anyone. So, Alessandro, if you can jump on to the final poll for us. This one, I guess, is an anonymous one. You can select more than one of them. Perfect. Thanks, Alessandro. And it's just, I want to make sure that, I'm able to give you more than just the information that, I've shared with you today, because, in the presentation, I've researched many, I've referenced many parts of the research. And if you're interested, I'm happy to share that information with you. So, again, you might also like, links to ebooks, information, or, you might want to know about more webinars that we have coming up. And, for those of you who might be interested, later in February, we're doing the situational leadership. It's a concept. So it's not even, the full training in there. It's really just an introduction into what situational leadership, the theory is about. I think that's a 3-hour training. So if anyone's interested in that, just, let me know, drop an email. Just reach out to me. I think everyone on the call has my information in there. And I just, let me end the poll on that one. Thanks, Alessandro. I'm not going to share that one. And I quickly want to stop sharing. So hopefully I'm going to get, there we go. And I would really love to open it up to a Q&A. So if you've got any questions, answers, anything that, you might be thinking of, either of what we've heard, what we've, I would love to answer any of the questions that you might have. So if you've got, either you can drop them into the chat box or go ahead and unmute yourself. Let me see if I can unmute everyone from this side. Participants. I want to unmute. So yeah, so if you have any questions, thoughts that, what you've heard, I'd love to answer any of the questions that you might have. And while if you're shy, you want to drop it into the chat box, that also works. I'll have a quick sip as we do that. I see Khan's busy smiling. Khan's got a question for me. Khan has always got a question.
No, not
this time.
Not today. Yeah, thank you very much. It was very nice. Sorry that I joined a little bit, couple of minutes late, but it was great. No questions, and thank you, and Happy New Year to everyone.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you and to your team. And also, quite often, I mean, if you are like me, which I tend to need to go away and think about things. And, if you have a question, because you're in the shower or you're out for a walk, for those of you who can go outside, you might think of a question tomorrow or over the weekend. Please, don't hesitate. Drop me an email, give me a ring. I would love to answer that, because I don't want you to go away and have a question that I haven't been able to answer.
Yeah, Roberto, in your leadership model, there is the D4 leader. Would you describe that as the best leader, or within that model, or?
No, it's a very good question, Paul. No, when you think of let me quickly try and jump back to the slide.
I think it's also at the back of your office, so on the door.
Yeah, it's there. You're quite right. Let me quickly. Oh, where? Now I've lost my share. Oh, come on. Oh, now this. Quickly jump. Hopefully you should be able to see that one. Yeah, when you look at that, Paul, so you've got the 4 development styles at the bottom, the D1 through to D4, and above it you've got the communication styles, the S1 through to S4. Now there is no right and wrong way. There's no better or worse. I mean, if I can put it, let me try and explain it from this perspective. Think of development levels. Everyone drives a car, I'm assuming. Everyone's got a driver's license. If when you think of when you were 16, 17, 18 and learning how to drive a car, you were D1 because you didn't know how to drive a car, but you were certainly enthusiastic. I want to go and drive because I want to go take my friends out, meet the girlfriend, whatever it was. But we didn't have the skill. Then we started to get a bit of experience. Suddenly, who remembers the first time you climbed in the car? And manuals. You had manual, you had gears, you had the clutch, indicators, and you had to look at all the other cars. You suddenly thought, oh, this is a lot harder than I had expected, because suddenly I realized, I didn't even know what I didn't know in, the D1 level. So you can become a little bit demotivated, but you carry on because, this is harder than I thought, but I still want the results it's going to bring. So you carried on pursuing it, and eventually you started to improve your skill on it, and you got a little bit better, you got a little bit more comfortable, and then suddenly it got to the point where you were able to tune in the radio, because we didn't have the nice digital radios. You had to tune them in, and you could even do that while driving, or change your tape cassette in my days. So you got better skills. Then suddenly you got to a D4 level, where what can you do in a car today? Most of us, and we don't need to admit it, but a lot of people are SMSing, texting. I've seen people open with their computers while they're driving, some crazy things, but you have very different skills. Now, if you think of learning how to drive a car, if you've got someone working with you as a leader, they need to communicate differently at every point of this. So, go back to the D1, you're learning how to drive a car. My dad did that. And it was basically, you stick the key in, you're going to turn that, you're going to put your foot on the clutch, put your foot on the brake, take the handbrake off. It was very directive. And how I taught my son to drive was pretty similar. So every part, on every task, goal, or skill, we are at one of those 4 levels. And for every one of those 4 levels, we need a different communication style. So, I mean, let me ask you guys, if you think of D1, D2, D3, and D4, where would you put yourself today, I'm just trying to see if everyone understands the model, at driving a car, would you consider who would put themselves at a D4 level in driving a car today? So you're an expert, you can teach people how to do it, you're very competent. Or would you put yourself at any one of the other ones where, yeah, I'm not as good? I would say we're probably all D4 in driving cars, right?
Right, yes.
Okay, let me ask you, those of you who know me, I love riding road bikes. Who's prepared to come and do 150 kilometers on a road bike tomorrow? We're going to go up over a couple of mountains here in Switzerland. It's probably going to take us about 10 hours. Who's D4 and is excited to do that? Probably not. Probably not most.
I usually drive bikes.
So when you think about that, we're at different levels. We might be at a D1 where we're going, yes, I'm in. I don't know. I've never done it, but I'm excited to do it. Or you might be going, well, I'm a D2 because I don't know how to do it and I actually don't want to know how to do it. I'm not interested. Or you might be, yeah, I'm a D3. I've been doing some cycling. Yeah, it's a bit challenging, but okay, let's try it. I'm unsure, but let's try it. So there's different communication styles. And likewise, another example would be, if you think of, okay, we're going to prepare a 5-course meal tomorrow night for 8 of your closest friends. You are responsible for buying all of the ingredients, cooking everything, cleaning up, making sure it's spectacular. How many would go, yes, I'm in, I'm D4, and some might be going, I can't cook more than an egg for myself. And, so hopefully that answers your question, but there is no perfect communication style. It's that we need to use a different communication style on everyone individually based on their competency, their skill of the goal that they're trying to achieve, as well as their commitment and motivation to the goal, Paul. Hopefully that explains it a little bit. Sorry, a roundabout way.
No, it's clear. I was just wondering where I would be within the company. I hope D4, but let's say the style is more between S3 and S2, I would say.
Yeah, we generally do bounce around, and naturally, I mean, I didn't present it yet, but there's actually a graph where you can, if you think about it, because in our organization on different tasks, different goals, we're going to have people that are going to be D1 all the way through to D4. And if you think of, a D1, D2, are they generating money and profit for the organization, or are they draining it? And then same thing, D3, D4, because again, it's every single task. And that's why, lining up people with the right tasks is important, but giving them the support, the direction that they need so that they can develop, because the best place we can have is all of our people at a D4 level. Then that way, literally, you can use the delegation form of communication and leadership. You delegate, they go away, they do it, they come to you if they got any problems. That's the ultimate one. But we don't always have everyone at a D4 level. So yeah, it's, the key thing to remember is that it is task or goal specific, and not you as a person or a D1 or a D4. Okay. It's really task or goal specific, whether it's driving a car, cooking a meal, or flying an airplane. Any other questions from anyone that I would love to answer? Okay. No, in that case, if there's no other questions, I'm just going to quickly check it. I haven't missed anything on nothing on the chat. No, then that way I can only say, absolutely thank you to everyone for joining me. Again, I wish you all, the best for 2021, a good year of health, success. Let's get back to the new norm as quickly as we can and get over this crazy situation and crazy cycle we're going through. And, again, if you have any questions, please feel free, reach out. Would love to answer any of those. But I can only say thank you, everyone, for joining. It's been a pleasure. Hopefully, this has made sense and has, given you something to think about, and yeah, if it's done that, then that's all I can, I can only say thank you. But thank you for your time. I'm going to give you 10 minutes back of your time as a gift from me to you for the new year. So, thank you to everyone, and I wish everyone a fantastic day. And, thank you for joining, and see you guys all soon, I hope, face to face.
Thank you, Roberto. It was very worthwhile. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Karen. Ciao, Davide.
Ciao, Roberto. Thanks for your time.
No,
Thank
thank
you very
you
much.
guys for joining. Thank you for joining on a public holiday.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.